Wholesalers, it's Rob Shore at Wholesaler Masterminds, and you may be thinking to yourself, Rob, you're thinking, what do you have besides this amazing podcast? And I'm so glad you asked. Wholesaler Masterminds has an assortment of product and services all designed around the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. As an example, we have coaching services designed to help you power wash your practice, whether you have 2 years or 22 years. We'll offer you speaking live engagements at divisional or national sales meetings. Our scheduling service has dedicated professionals trained in the art of getting you more appointments, Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers. Our Speakers Bureau brings you amazing speakers and processes to get better return on investment out of those speakers. And finally, our partnership, our newest partnership with Allego. If you have Allego and want to get the Wholesaler Masterminds channel on your Allego platform, please let us know. Wholesaler Masterminds, happy to bring you this podcast and so much more. Wholesaler Masterminds, the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. Is it just me? No, really. Is it just me? Or has the amount of vitriol, the amount of animus that is packed into almost any conversation today just escalated? It could be a conversation you're having with a relative over the dinner table. It could be somebody that you meet at the bar that's a stranger. It could be, heaven forbid, a client. There's just so much resistance to ideas and idea sharing on both sides of a ledger. How exactly do you go about influencing anyone today? Or is everything just happening in this huge echo chamber? Welcome to the only podcast on the planet dedicated to exploring the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesalers and their leaders. This is the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. I'm your host, the founder of Wholesaler Masterminds, Rob Shore. Wholesalers, welcome back to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. In their best-selling business parable, The Go-Giver, and then their follow-up, The Go-Giver Leader, Bob Burg and John David Mann challenged the conventional wisdom about success. And now they're back with a new and equally compelling story about the power of genuine influence in business and beyond. The Go-Giver Influencer, a little story about a most persuasive idea, tackles the paradox of achieving what you want by focusing on the other person's interests. No, not in a way that's self-sacrificial, but rather in a way that all parties benefit greatly. This results in both immediate and long-term success. Our guest today, Bob Burg, speaks all over the world on topics related to the Go-Giver, as well as what he calls genuine influence. Well, his total book sales number well over 1 million copies. His and Mann's original book, The Go-Giver, has itself sold over 700,000 copies and has spurred an international movement. Their new book, however, The Go-Giver Influencer, might be their most important book of all. Bob Burg, welcome back again to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show.
Hey, Rob, it's always so great to be with you.
I am delighted to have you for the third time. This is rare air, Bob Burg.
That's right, and I'm honored.
3 times, gosh darn it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you planned this. You had to have planned this. You had to have planned that a book about influence would come out in an environment that I described moments ago. Am I right about that? And if so, how did you come upon this idea of a book about influence?
I think the way you described the current state of affairs was right on the mark. It's as though people are living in the key word we've been hearing lately, echo chambers, right? Mm-hmm. They have a side they're on, and we think about this in terms of politics, but it's in many other areas, but especially politically these days. You either agree with me, or not only are you wrong, but you are evil.
You're a dirty dog wrong.
Yeah.
You're just a dirty dog wrong. Exactly.
Yeah. And And what's happening is, you see all this vitriol, you see this inside, you might see on Facebook, for example, and this could be in any medium, or as you said, it could be at a family get together or a party or what have you. But somebody makes a statement, a political statement or whatever, and someone writes back in disagreement, but not just disagreement. They say, people like you are just the worst. You must hate people and want to ruin this country and blah, 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 blah. And if you notice, the person who's been insulted, Rob, never writes back saying, oh, thank you. Thank you for pointing out the error of my ways. I hadn't thought about it like that before until you just insulted everything I've stood for my entire life. I agree with you. I am renouncing my beliefs and taking on yours. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
So people have gotten, meaner and more insulting and vitriolic. But what they haven't done is become more influential or persuasive. Just the opposite. When attacking someone like that, that person is more likely to cling to their position.
I mean, emotionally, you just threw me completely on the defensive, right? I mean, there's no way that even if there's a modicum of truth in what you say, as soon as you tell me I'm ugly and my mother dresses me funny, I'm going to put up my defenses.
Exactly. And so I don't know if most people who engage in these arguments, if they really think they're ever going to change someone's mind, or it's just a release for them to have their say and feel temporarily good about themselves. I don't know. But I do know that for those who want to be more influential, and as you said, the timing was right for this. This is why we did this, because we know there are a lot of people out there who don't really enjoy that whole thing. They don't like the idea of the echo chamber. They want to be able to communicate with others in such a way, Rob, that they're able to get the results they want, but by making other people feel genuinely good about themselves, about the situation, and about you. Yeah. And we can do that.
And I want to be clear to everyone listening that this is not a political show. You never heard us do a political show, and we're not going to start doing political shows. This is a business show for wholesalers. And this is a business parable. The story that you tell is a business parable. And it's how you become more influential in business. So let's start with the top line. Let's make sure we level set through all of the mess of the current environment we talked about. What is influence? What is influence?
On a very, very basic level, we can define influence as simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. It is helping that financial advisor to understand why they should be working with you and your product line. And that's influence on a very basic level. But that's not the essence of influence. It's not the substance of influence. The essence of influence is pull as opposed to push. We've all heard the saying, how far can you push a rope? And the answer is not very far, at least not very fast or very effectively. And that's why great influencers don't push. You never hear someone say, wow, that Julie or that Dave, he is so influential. He has a lot of push with people. He sure is pushy. He sure pushes his will on people. We just love him. We'll follow him anywhere. No, absolutely not. Influence is pull. It's an attraction. Great influencers attract others first to themselves and only then to their ideas. And the best ones do this through discovering what the other person wants, needs, desires, and helping them to get it.
Let's start to peel apart the 5 secrets of genuine influence that you speak about. So hopefully folks can start to get a sense of what this entails and how they might be able to craft becoming a better influencer. The first one you speak about is to be a master of your emotions. And you know, we talked about this crazy time that we're in and how, you know, people can go from 0 to 60 in just a nanosecond in terms of their emotional response. And so when you say master your emotions, you know, I'm thinking, get a hold of yourself is what I'm thinking. But what do you really mean there by master your emotions?
Well, that is a very legitimate way of looking at it. It's when your a prospective customer or client has an objection that you see as being totally irrational. It's something you've answered before. It's something you don't really feel is their real objection, but they're just kind of throwing it at you, and you just want to react, right? But you need to master your emotions. You need to be in control of your emotions, because it's only when we're in control of our emotions that we're even in a position to be able to take a potentially negative situation or person and turn it into a win for everyone involved. Now, we all know this intuitively, yet how often do we allow ourselves to lose control and become defensive, become annoyed, become angry? And if we ask ourselves why this is, our answer would need to be because we're human beings. And as human beings, we are emotional creatures. It's how we're built. Now, that we'd like to think we're logical, of course, and to a certain extent we are, but we're pretty emotion-based. We make major decisions based on emotion. We rationalize our decisions, which really means nothing more than that we tell ourselves rational lies in order to justify that emotion-based decision. Rob, understand this. We're not saying you should forego your emotions or that you should deny your emotions, only to make sure that you are the master of them as opposed to they being the master of you. Or as one of my great friends, the leadership teacher, Dondi Scumaci, says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car. I mean, right? You're at the wheel. They're in the passenger side.
Which is awesome. I mean, and I don't think anything that you're saying is you can't be passionate. You can't be filled with that certain emotional secret sauce that helps you drive home your point. But when it goes from emotion, what I hear you saying, and you're the expert, when you go from emotion to emotional is when you start to tip over the other side. Is that a fair depiction?
Well, I think you sound like the expert there, because that's perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And before we leave this, there is a notion called the seatbelt principle of emotion, and I just want to know a little bit about that.
This means that well, one of the characters in the book, Judge Henshaw, said to her protege, Jackson, when you allow your emotions to drive the car, it's sort of like letting a drunk driver behind the wheel, okay? So, and that's your emotions. Your emotions need to be in the passenger side, seatbelts safely fastened. And you want to consult your emotions. Again, we're not saying ignore them. She also said to make believe you're a company, and like any company, there's a CEO and there's a board of directors. The CEO is your logical mind. The board of directors is your emotional mind. Well, the CEO should certainly consult the board of directors. We should because the board of directors has wisdom to share. We should consult our emotions. Our emotions have wisdom to share. But the final decision in business needs to be made by the CEO. Our final decision needs to be made by our logical mind, not our emotional mind, if we want to create the environment where we're more likely to have the results we desire.
Now, the second point that you write about in the 5 Secrets of Genuine Influence, the 5 learnings that come from the book, is to step into the other person's shoes. This is a basic tenet of emotional intelligence, is it not? I mean, your ability to see someone else's perspective through their lenses is core and key. Tell me how you frame it here for influence, please.
Well, you're exactly right. Doing so is more difficult than that because we say step into the other person's shoes, but then you realize most people have different size feet.
They don't fit.
Right, exactly. We all have, as you said, our different belief systems, our different ways of seeing the world. And most conflict is a result of 2 or more people seeing the same thing from different points of view. And as human beings, we tend to believe that most people see the world basically the same way we do. I mean, how could it be any different, right? It's all we know. But it's not true, right? And so what we need to be able to do is discover what they're thinking, discover what's in their mind, discover how they're seeing this. And this is where asking questions comes into play, asking the right discovery questions and listening. And this is where it's very easy to drop the ball because we tend to listen in order to respond. We tend to listen in order to come back with the correct answer. We tend to listen in terms of sort of cutting through their argument, right? So we can overcome. And it's just not effective. We need to listen first and foremost in order to learn what's going on with them. And this is why the other mentor, the coach, because in this story there were two mentors and two proteges, the coach, George, tells Jillian, listen not just with your ears. That's surface listening. That's what most of us do. Listen with your eyes. Listen with your posture. Listen, he said, with the back of your neck.
The back of your neck. Exactly. What is that?
Yeah. Put your entire being into it. You can actually put I hate to say, focus on the back of your neck because you're focusing on the other person, but actually see that as coming from the back of your neck. It's forcing you to actually be conscious while you're listening. Try it once or twice with someone who you're very comfortable with, of course, because it's a different kind of feeling. But after you do it a couple of times, you'll get hooked on it. And it's an amazingly effective way to listen. And that, number one, you learn more about that person. Number two, that person knows you're listening. They sense you're listening. And hey, who doesn't want to feel understood?
You know what's so interesting to me, Bob, is first of all, there's two things come to mind as I hear you speak about this. One is this notion of how many things that we wish to achieve or wish to achieve in a more effective and efficient way emanate out of listening.
Yes.
That's one thing that is clear and apparent to me. The second is listen. If you were to make a list, perhaps, of the top 5 ways to have better influence over people, I'm not certain how many people would put listening on that list. In other words, because when I think influence, and maybe it's just my twisted head, when I think influence, some synonyms there could be to cajole, to coerce, other synonyms along that realm. And to do those, you don't necessarily have to listen to anybody. So it's interesting that you attach listening to the influence piece. Makes perfect sense, but it's interesting as I hear you speak about it.
Oh, thank you. And, this is something that the really good influencers know that, because remember, in order to influence, to move someone to that desired action, not through force, not through fraud, not through compulsion. Those are forms of manipulation. Mm-hmm. Okay. What we're talking about is persuasion, which is much more positive. To do that, understanding that nobody, and I often, I jokingly say this, but a lot of times when I'm speaking at a sales conference, I'll start out by saying, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. Right? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, and they're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice person who believes in your services and products. No, they're going to buy from you only because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And that's good, because what it means is that in order to influence, you've got to put your focus in the right place, them. And to do that, you need to listen with the back of your neck to truly get where they're coming from. Otherwise, it just isn't going to happen.
This third piece seems to me, could be dicey if you don't do it in the right way, and you call it set the frame.
Right.
So tell us more about it, and then if it's not abundantly clear to you, I'll explain why I think it could be dicey if not done the right way, but I'm sure you're ahead of me on that. Sure.
Well, who knows, but you're a pretty wise and clever man, Rob Shore. So I don't know that I'm ahead of you on this, but a frame is really the foundation from which everything else evolves. When you set the proper frame, and sometimes you have to reset someone else's already negative frame, when you do it correctly, you're really 80 to 90% of the way there to the results you want. My favorite story of a perfectly set frame was when I was in a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant a few years ago. I was having coffee and reading, and there was a little boy, a toddler, about 2.5 years old. He was running around the restaurant, and his parents called him back over to their table. As he walks toward them, he takes a spill on the floor. He slips and he falls. Now, he didn't hurt himself, you could tell, but he was definitely shocked. He was surprised. He did not expect that. So immediately he looks at the two people he trusts most in the world, his mom and dad, in order to get their interpretation of the event. What happened. He wanted to know what happens next. What does this mean? Well, I truly believe, Rob, that had they gotten upset and panicky and, oh no, are you okay? I think he would have started to cry. But the mom and dad just handled it so beautifully. They walked over quickly, but very calmly, very serenely. They had smiles on their face. They began to applaud and they said, oh, how fun, what a good trick. And immediately he began to laugh. What the parents did is they set a productive frame from which he could operate. And we can do that going into any situation. But what if we have someone who, and it can be as simple as a big genuine smile on your face when you meet someone, and a greeting that sets the frame of allies and what have you. But what if you come across a prospective client who is sort of, a little defensive. They don't want to be sold, that sort of thing. And you kind of sense that. Well, instead of buying into that frame and kind of pushing against it, let's instead reset the frame. And you might say to this person, Mary, while we've been able to help a lot of people with this product, whether or not it's the right fit for you, we simply can't know without exploring deeper and determining whether it meets your needs, whether it's something you would want to get behind. So please know our discussion is for both of us to discover this. And if it is, great. If not, that's okay too.
I completely see that. And of course, I agree with you. The place where I was thinking about the resetting becoming a potentially slippery slope if not executed in the right way is when it does revolve. Let's take it out of the office and put it at the dining room table with family. When it does revolve around someone else's negativity, around insert their negative thing here, how you reset that. And then that's where my brain was going to, well, that can be a slippery slope. Did I explain that correctly?
A slippery slope in what regard?
In other words, how do I make sure I don't step in it if I'm trying to reset it? How do I make sure, right? So it doesn't become inflammatory. It actually becomes successful in terms of its resetting.
Okay. Well, so this would be, of course, it would depend on the situation itself. But let's say somebody had something happen at school. They got a disappointing grade or something like that. And they feel badly about it or something like that. And, the first thing I would do is I would not say to the person, oh, well, it's no big deal. Don't feel bad. But you can set the frame of understanding by saying something like, it sounds like you're really disappointed. And they say, well, yeah, I was expecting this because I really needed to bring this grade up to this and that or whatever. And you could say, well, tell us more about it. And then they go, well, we thought blah 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 blah. Well, what do you think was the issue at hand? And you bring them out by getting them talking about it and letting them kind of share their feelings about it. So whether it just, instead of it just being I'm angry at this, rah 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 rah, you're kind of resetting a frame where now they're going into more of a being able to express their feelings in a way that they have something to hold on to.
The next piece here is about communicating with tact and empathy. And empathy is tough. Empathy is tough for most people I know. It's tough for me sometimes. So this two-part question. Number one, for you to further embellish the notion of communicating with tact and empathy. And part two is helping us professionally display empathy. How do we, and that's obviously back to emotional intelligence, but how do we properly display it as an influencer would?
Well, tact itself, and my dad has always defined tact as the language of strength.
Okay.
And I've always enjoyed that definition because it's the strong person who can, again, control their emotions and not just say what first comes to their mind, who can ask themselves, how is what I'm about to say to this person about to affect this person? How's it going to make them feel? What is it going to what kind of response or reaction is it going to bring out in this person? So tact, in a sense, it can be a way of communicating information to someone that they may or may not necessarily want to hear. Sometimes, hey, we have to be able to correct someone, show them a different way, a better way of doing something. We need to be able to critique or even constructively criticize. Tact allows us to do this in such a way that not only is the person not defensive toward us and resistant to our ideas, but they are open to us and more accepting of our ideas. This is what tact allows us to do. Now, empathy, which by definition is the identification with or vicarious experiencing of another person's feelings, and that's fine, except for, again, we don't necessarily know what they feel. We don't know how they feel. And when we talked earlier about asking questions to put us in the other person's shoes, that's more on a logical basis. That's kind of head to head, whereas this is more heart to heart. Empathy is more of a resonance. I truly believe, Rob, that empathy, which by the way can be learned, it absolutely can be learned. I don't believe empathy means you necessarily understand how that person feels, because the fact is sometimes we have no idea how they feel. Mm-hmm. And even if we do, no, we still can't understand it because we wouldn't feel that way, and that's okay. I think empathy is communicating, whether by words or by what you say, or just by being there, just by being you, just by the essence of yourself. I think empathy is communicating to someone that you may not understand how they feel, but you understand they're feeling something, mm-hmm. and that this something is distressful to them, and you are there with them to help them work through it. That is empathy, that's appreciated.
That's important. Just to say it back as I rephrase it, you don't have to experience what they're experiencing. You have to understand that they're experiencing something and be able to communicate and appreciate, not communicate, but appreciate that, if I hear you correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 5 of 5. This one makes me chuckle because this is kind of the root of all evil of where things start to disintegrate pretty quickly. Letting go of having to be right.
Exactly. And this is and you know from John David Mann's and my Go-Giver series of parables, we tend to have 5 either laws or principles or secrets, what have you. And the first 4, while they could be counterintuitive at times, they head in the same direction. And then the 5th one is sort of that opposite direction, that if you look at it just on the surface, it seems to contradict everything else we're saying. When you look at it deeper, it actually brings it together. And that's what this one does. Let go of having to be right. We're not saying let go of desiring to be right or let go of preferring to be right or doing your work and the research and the homework and everything that you can to be prepared and to be right. Absolutely. What we're saying is let go of the attachment to having to be right. And that sounds like you'd be less influential, but you're actually much more influential for 2 reasons. One, when you let go of having to be right, you go into learner's mode. The people who just cannot admit to making a mistake, they can't say they're wrong, they can't be wrong, they can't learn, right? Their mind's made up, don't confuse them with the facts. And they're stuck at the same level of knowledge they already are. But when you let go of having to be right, you're able to learn. You're also able to see things from that other person's side, which doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It just means you're able to see why they might be thinking what they're thinking. Okay, that's the first part. You actually are armed with more knowledge. The second thing, and this is even more powerful, is that when the other person sees that you're not attached to having to be right or winning at all costs or trying to make them lose or what have you, they know they're dealing with someone who's interested in seeking the truth. And they will typically respond in kind, even on an unconscious basis, and be much more willing to be in the proper dialogue with you.
My hard drive is still spinning when you said, when you choose to not have to be right, you enter learner's mode.
Right.
Then my hard drive's spinning on that one because it opens you up when you're not busy crafting the why I'm right. Your brain allows you to accept all this other input where the learning happens.
Yeah. Yeah. As opposed to the person who's so stuck in their position, this is where, and we often hear the word confirmation bias comes into play. And that term means exactly what it sounds like, confirmation bias. When you hear or come across something that confirms your already held beliefs or biases, you accept it as fact. When it's something that is contradictory to your already held beliefs or biases, you ignore it. You cannot learn that way. You cannot grow. You cannot be any wiser than you were the moment before.
Wholesalers, if you could go all the way back to the relationship we have with Bob Burg here on Wholesaler Masterminds Radio, the original show, I did tell you the story that one of my clients had actually suggested that I read The Go-Giver. This is now going back 6+ years ago, Preston 7 years ago. And I am grateful for that recommendation to this day, because here we are now 7 years later and another book later, and Bob Burg joins us once again. The book, once again, is The Go-Giver Influencer, a little story about a most persuasive idea. We will, of course, link it up in the show notes and on the website. Bob Burg, how can I thank you enough for being here again?
Oh, just by staying the same terrific guy you are, and I appreciate you for having me again.
You are most kind, sir. Wholesalers, come back next time for another episode of the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. You'll find all of our content at wholesalermasterminds.com, and the podcast can be found at iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.